a comment.
Hello, you're very welcome along to another episode of the Talking Sport podcast and a special live podcast for those watching on YouTube. It's Daniel Hussey here, joined as always by my brother Sean.
How's it going?
Not too bad, Sean. A quiet week or quiet day or weekend even on the news front.
Yeah, no, when I was watching the United Burnley game, and obviously news was kind of feeding through. I was kind of half on Twitter and half watching the game. Going, geez, Burnley are playing well here, and I kind of took the gloss off Burnley for most of it. But no, look, I think all this stuff has been coming. For people, a lot of people who've been reading about it. To be honest, I've kind of forgotten about it, if you like, when it first came out, and there's obviously been slowly petering through about it. But it's clear to see that I personally think it's of the opinion it's going to happen in some shape or form. And the only people who can stop it are the people who are the safeguarders of football, if you like UEFA and FIFA. But they haven't done anything in the last 25 years to safeguard the game that would give me any confidence in thinking this could be stopped. But I think it definitely has been coming, if you like. This is no kind of flash in the pan idea, and there have been decisions made in football that have led to this kind of thing happening. But ultimately, it is a grave shame for so many people at so many different clubs, and to watch the game and the club they love just kind of disembark in front of them. It is a quite surreal feeling. And obviously, a lot of people have lamented the 18th of April as the day football died in 2021, and I do think it's going to take an awful lot for that to ever change again.
Yeah, explain maybe to people, because obviously, if you look at it the cold light of day, in terms of the money situation and UEFA maybe not giving enough money to the clubs, and that was, maybe talk a little bit about the reason behind the clubs and why it's just going to leave such a negative impact on the rest of the football pyramid. Like even, starting off in the Premier League, an Aston Villa fan right down to a Crewe Alexander fan, why it's so important that this doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, so what the big clubs, if you like, the top six in England, especially, what they want is to play this in midweek, to have all the financial rewards of playing this, but to be able to come back to play in the Premier League and to be able to use the millions and millions of euro they're getting from the Super League to boost their team in the Premier League. So it'll effectively be in the Premier League, if it was to happen, and if the UEFA and the FA were to allow it, there would be an even bigger disconnect between the top six clubs' finances and the bottom 14 clubs or whatever it is. So you could have, an Arsenal side or a Tottenham side or a Chelsea side with 400 million plus extra to spend on players. And obviously that's what they want. They want to unlevel the playing field even further. And obviously they just want the power of having this establishment. I mean, it would be a league similar to the NFL, or similar to other American sports. I mean, this is very much an American idealism, if you like. This is to grow the game further. And I'm sure that, for example, for the top six clubs in England are owned by Americans. This is very much an American market. It's an American idea, and it's a way of making further money, and it's a way of having something that's bigger than football, having something that's bigger than the Premier League. It's this is going to be one of the biggest organizations in the world if it is to take off, and it will kind of end up bigger than football, if you know what I mean. It'll be bigger than the average person down the street. They won't care about, I think if you told the big six clubs at the moment that no one in England or in Europe will watch it, well, they go, well, that's okay, because we're going to dominate America, we're going to dominate South America, Asia. We're going to penetrate all these markets where there's billions and billions of euro of money to be found, whether it's through gambling, whether it's through sponsorship, whether it's through money laundering or any of that. I mean, that's what they're there to do. They're there to penetrate those markets, and they don't care if 95% of the people that come up to the games are getting tickets for free, and they're just finding a way of getting tickets that, they're going to make money outside of the game, and that's obviously what their plan is, and it's what it's been all along, and that's why these people are involved in football.
Yeah, let's take the American ideal, because a lot of people, I love NFL, but I think that was brought up in the draft system, in the 32 team system. I think at the core of this, and what the biggest issue is, outside maybe the money, is the lack of relegation, that you're going to have 15 clubs, 15 super clubs, including our own club Arsenal, as well as 5 other Premier League clubs that a lot of Irish people would support. there every single year. And then these 5 other clubs that they get to have every year, I don't know how they're going to do this promotion. They're not even getting a slice of the pie regardless. I think the percentage of the prize money compared to what you're actually getting is very small compared to what it is now, where you get a lot of money for winning the Champions League. So the whole point of this is just, it's going to, like you said, keep the 15 clubs, but at the core of it, it's that no relegation thing, that no matter how bad your team is, you're always going to be at the top table. And, you know, you can look at Arsenal and Spurs as 2 examples of clubs that have a serious neck, even considering being in this competition to start with.
Yeah, well, like, I don't, like, this has been going on for 5 or 6 years. This isn't a flash in the pan. I mean, when this idea was initially started, I mean, Liverpool weren't anywhere near where they are now. So I don't see it as a you know, judging it on performances. I mean, this is going to be done regardless of who's who. I think this would have been done if Liverpool were ninth, if Arsenal were ninth, if, you know, whatever. I think this is so far down the line that it's nothing to do with how teams are going. This is about the maximisation of profits. Arsenal,
but
for example,
just on that point, like Arsenal and Spurs have no European Cup winning history, so you can see, I understand the reasons for it. It's purely financial, but it's so frustrating for a football fan to look at that and think, hold on, lads, you know, just because in a point of time Arsenal and Spurs have been, you know, are in a position money wise because of the Premier League, Spurs more so based on the Premier League, that they can just have a given right to become in this league. Like, the league was set up in the 80s, you know, there'd be different teams, you know, it's just it's in a different set of time.
Oh, it's exactly that. I mean, it's all opportunity driven, you know, it's timing. It's, you know, 5 years ago when, like, this has been in the pipeline. This is, you know, the dreams of, you know, Perez at Real Madrid, for example, and people who bought into to Arsenal, and Stan Kroenke, people like the Fenway Sports Group who bought into Liverpool. They bought into this knowing that this is a possibility, knowing that this is something that can happen. And obviously it has happened. It's happening in front of our eyes. And, you know, I think it will end up like the NFL. I think this is just going to happen. You know, I think this is going to be driven. I think they're going to lose a lot of it. What makes football great? Obviously, we all know that. But the only people I think who can stop it are UEFA and FIFA. And, you know, they've done nothing, like I said, in my lifetime to any big decision to safeguard the game. I mean, you had Sepp Blatter, who was head of FIFA, who has been disgraced with corruption, one of the greatest footballers of all time, Michel Platini, someone of, you know, people like our dad's generation, one of the greats of his generation, disgraced by corruption. You know, people who fall into football, people who are in football, you know, they make these decisions because they know other people are corrupt. So they're, you know, they're just looking after themselves. So I think it's just to maximize, obviously, the game, and it's happening in every sport. I mean, I don't get people.
Well, just look at Emmett's comment there is a good example. The Cricket World Cup, which you've spoken out against a lot, you know, the qualifying system. Just explain what they do there and how the football is actually probably similar at the moment if this goes ahead.
Yeah, so they changed. Obviously, the cricket system used to be a 16-team World Cup, where it'd be very similar to what you would see in like a group stage. And then they've kind of changed it now, where it's very much, you know, a 10-team World Cup where they all play each other once, and it's kind of spread out, and there's a lot of dead rubber games, but it's just so that India and Pakistan can play each other, basically, because India and Pakistan, they don't play each other outside of ICC sanctioned events, because obviously there's an incredibly big history there about violence between the two and a lot of political unrest. So they had this so India and Pakistan can play, because it's one of the biggest sporting events in the world. You know, it's one that has one of the biggest revenue drivers for cricket in the world. You know, every sport has done this. Like, cricket had this World Series in the 80s in Australia, where there was a rich Australian man who owned a channel, or ABC, or I can't remember the name of the company in Australia, but he wanted cricket on that channel and he couldn't get the rights, so he set up his own league, put a lot of money into it. This has happened all over the world. You know, every sport has moved with the times. You know, I think a lot of people are very quick to judge on like the Premier League and saying how very much it is hypocritical of people to say things like that, where, you know, when the Premier League did it, it did it probably for the greater good, if you like, of English football, and English football has benefited hugely from the Premier League. Obviously, there's been clubs who massively struggled from the come down of the finances in the Premier League. You know, your Sunderlands, Boltons, Portsmouth, that have really struggled, and obviously that's one of the big flaws with it. But I have to say, it has done a lot of good, the Premier League. Obviously, it's on pay-per-view. It's lost a lot of its core audiences, but every sport has done that. You look at golf. Golf has moved on now. Sky have all the rights for all 4 majors. or not the PGA anymore. Then you have rugby moved on to pay-per-view. Cricket has moved on to pay-per-view, and you can sit here and discuss all day the merits of the two, but it's incredibly big that it's happened. It is happening now, and it's nothing to do with the clubs. To be honest, it's nothing to do with Liverpool Football Club or United or Arsenal. It's to do with the owners. It's the people who put up the statements on the website last night. You can be sure they're absolutely against it. They're absolutely furious about it. But it's their job.
And just on Arsenal, they've seen their colleagues made redundant. Well, the owners are kind of planning this. And good question here, I suppose. It's like people saying. There are people kind of saying, well, any club, clubs like say Arsenal, for example, would feel under pressure because other clubs. But like you said, this is the owners. It's not like the club have made that decision. It's the owners, and it's important to kind of distinguish between the two. Albeit, there's a lot of good people in Arsenal. It's just a mess. But what about that point there? That obviously you're going to lose millions by not joining it, and it's amazing that Dortmund came out today saying they won't be joining the European Super League, which I think is a great step. Well, maybe in a couple of months other clubs might follow, thinking hopefully to the fact that Dortmund are doing it while it's looking like every big club in Europe is going there really speaks volumes of Borussia Dortmund and the way they act. And it's a way Liverpool kind of pride themselves on being very similar to Borussia Dortmund. I don't want to kick clubs because like you said, there's a difference between the owners, but you can see that the fans ownership model in Germany working so well with Borussia Dortmund there, the way they can hold their own there and say, no, we're not moving. Whereas Liverpool are just under pressure because they've got American owners, same way with Arsenal.
Yeah, well, I think obviously you're right there. This is a decision made by owners, and the reason it's opportunism, it's because of the timing of it naturally, but it's because the clubs have for the first year in quite a while, a lot of them would have lost a heap of money and obviously made people redundant. I know Arsenal taking out loans. Liverpool came under huge pressure when they opted to furlough staff in, I think, April or May. So this has been fast tracked because of what has happened in football, and it's the time, and it's April. Fans are starting to get back into stadia, and the reason they're doing this is because fans can't mobilise a campaign. Fans, the greatest voice fans have is their seats. It's they can use their seat, they can walk out, they can chant, they can. Obviously not in the FAI's case, bring in a banner because we all know what happened there with John Delaney. But that's what they can do. They can mobilise, but they can't do it now when they're sat at home behind the keyboard. They can't really do anything. So that's what the timing has been done. I think obviously it if you like, for a monetary sense, it absolutely makes sense for these big clubs. From a moral sense, absolutely not. And like I said, the only people who really can't clamp down are FIFA and UEFA. But like I said, there's so much corruption in football everywhere, and that, like I said, it wouldn't give me a sense. And I just think, it's been going on so long. This is slowly starting to build. I mean, if you look at the people who go into to own football clubs, you look at the 92 clubs in the top four divisions in England, and I'd safely say 50% of them want their owners sacked. I take Norwich example. Norwich are a prime example of two owners, Michael Wynne Jones and Delia Smith, who put incredible amount of money into Norwich, and they're self-sustaining now, and they own it. It's a community club. They're two local people. And then you go to the extreme of an Arsenal or a United or Liverpool, which are owned by these American men with big pockets. Don't do TV interviews, don't go to games, don't care about it, and are there because it's a security. It's an asset to them. It's for example, Stan Kroenke building the new stadium in the LA Rams using Arsenal as his sort of liability, as his backup plan, and that's obviously it's come to the fore now. And look, it's going to take an awful way to go, but it's not just big issues here. It's everywhere really.
Yeah, and I guess like final thing on this, it's just like, do you think it's going to happen? Like it seems that they've kind of gone all in on this model. And is there anything fans can do? Because fans will be back in stadiums toward next month on a trial basis. I'd expect them next season. And if fans don't turn up, have they misread the room a little bit here, or were they expecting this? And like you said, like, while they will always have fans in Asia and Australia and whatnot. Like the fact that if they don't sell in London, like they're not going to move, are they? Or like, for example, are Arsenal going to move the stadium or like a franchise, or how do you think it's going to work there? seem to have potentially lost Sean there. So I'm going to answer a few of your comments questions. I think Jim summed it up well there. What did he say? The Wi-Fi in Cherrywood is shocking. Very true. We're on Rathfarnham Wi-Fi here, and we're going here. So Emmett asked, could this benefit mid-table teams in England if the Champions League and Europa League coexist with a reduced profile? Probably 7 European Super League spots, 4 Champions League plus 2 and 3 Europa Leagues, and a lot of teams qualifying for Europe. Yeah, well, the Premier League is going to look very different. Like, to be honest with you, it's going to be like, I don't know about that. Like, the thing is, even if you qualify for the European Super League, you're not going to get enough share of the pie to ever like compete with those clubs. Sean, we have you back there now. We lost you there. Just what on that question and what you were kind of talking about there. It's kind of asking, would this benefit England mid-table teams, let's say in Aston Villa or Leeds United, for example? Could this benefit them at all?
No. If the top 6 teams in England don't play in the Premier League, I think the Premier League will lose a lot of its worth. Will lose a lot of sponsorship money, revenue. It's hard to know, really. There probably is no answer, in my opinion, of it. The Premier League would obviously lessen in a lot of ways. The Champions League, Europa League will lessen. It won't have the same pull, or it won't have the same draw, or the same revenue streams to it. So that's why it's obviously a landmark moment, not just for the big clubs, for your Aston Villa, for your Newcastles, for owners who put a lot of money into it. In some cases, like Wolves, it's a big moment for football in general, really. But I think there's a lot of people right there, and I see Connor Swords' comment there about the fundamental changes to ownership. I mean, this has been coming. Like I said just before I went off there, there's a lot of clubs in England. You take Birmingham City, for example. They've been absolutely saved. That the Gim family who own it, absolutely saved by Lee Bowyer coming in and winning 4 or 5 games and looking like he's going to save them from relegation, because Birmingham has been run into the ground, similar to so many clubs, Bolton, Portsmouth, Sunderland. Decades of people coming in with big egos that think they know what they're doing, they think they care about the club, but ultimately they're there to make a quick few bob and to try and buy the club for as cheap as they can and sell it on for as pricey as they can. It's just the FA's clear and proper ownership metric that they use obviously hasn't worked, because there's absolute con men that have come in and brought clubs in England. Similarly in Ireland, we have to get that sorted. I mean, you have Lee Power at Swindon, who owns Watford as well, or Waterford as well here in Ireland. Waterford are in a big crisis at the minute. Kevin Sheedy's there, and there's been talks of players unrest. I think a lot of that's been squashed. Trouble on the training ground. You ask Swindon fans, they'd all pay a couple of grand to get rid of him each. He's an absolute con man. What he's done there at Swindon, it's just not worked. Hasn't really worked at Waterford. Obviously, they were unlucky a couple of years ago with that European place being taken off them. Then, like, you look at Dundalk with all the problems they're having at the moment with their owners. So it's not just in England, if you like. It's Ireland. It's Scotland as well with Dermot Desmond. It's everywhere. Like, I mean, this sort of stuff has been coming for a long while, and it is a chance for football to get its act together. In the summer we were put with the prospect of the Saudis buying Newcastle. Obviously, Newcastle fans would have thought that was great. They'd have the chance of getting to the top 4, and that's what football has become. It's become a quest to, it's become a money game where clubs in the Championship are making decisions based on pushing to get to the Premier League just for that parachute payment, just for that level of income. And that quest, that sort of chase, if you like, has killed a lot of clubs, and a lot of clubs are really, really suffering from it. Unless you have a structure similar to a Norwich, it's very hard to be sustainable, very hard to have a sort of structure and a sustainability to them, because it's very easy to be a Sunderland or a Wigan or a Hull or an Ipswich, clubs that have just fallen by grace. And it is quite shameful, but it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere in the game. I mean, I remember doing the stadium tour to San Siro and learning about Berlusconi and where he sat in the dugout, and there was, I think there was like 6 or 7 times glazed glass for bulletproof, because he was that big a figure. And you read about the Italian history, and you read about the history of Real Madrid and the Francos and Barcelona and everything. It's, football's always had this problem, and we have it in Ireland with a few clubs. Obviously you've got Bows who are fan owned, and there'll be a lot of obviously pressure on Bows to keep that going, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Daily Mount in a few years, how they work that. and all these bumps in the roads, and hopefully, obviously, us in Ireland and then the FBI get their structure right. Um, but it's all down to who owns football clubs. And now, very few people own a football club to live a few own a football club to live a boyhood dream. Few do it to kind of give back, and 95% of them do it to earn a few bob. And that's obviously just been shown recently.
And would you get alienated at all if this does go ahead? Would you consider not supporting Arsenal?
I probably would, yeah. Yeah, no,
Would you actually? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. I like it's hard to know because it's hard to predict what will happen. I personally think what will happen is UEFA and FIFA will take a cut of it. If they feel like they're going to lose the best players, UEFA feel they're going to lose the best players, they're going to take a cut of it. UEFA need Mbappe, Haaland, Messi, Ronaldo. They need that for their own revenue streams. So I think it will become a bit of a hybrid where everything is sort of geared towards it, if you like. But I definitely would stop supporting an Arsenal club because for the last few years, so many people have always said, "Oh, look at the owners, look at all this," but it's definitely hard. It's caught up with a lot of people, and I think it's. But if you go everywhere, I mean, if you're in Waterford and you support a big club or whatever, or a club in England, and you say, "Right, I'm going to support my local Waterford club," you're probably going to go into a campaign where you hate the owners there. Dundalk, I mean, the bit of the fall from grace there.
Just explain the Dundalk story, and even like you said, just on that point, like League of Ireland clubs are not immune for this either. So it's like, obviously, I think Bows, like for anyone looking for a League of Ireland club, I know that's might be a bit dramatic because nothing's happened yet, but Bows, I think, are the club. And maybe talk a little bit about Bows, a good news story, and then maybe explain to people who don't follow League of Ireland a little bit about Waterford and Dundalk and what's going on there.
Well, Bows have always been kind of fan owned. That's what they pride themselves off, really. And obviously in the current climate, it's a brilliant thing they've done. But they've really kind of progressed in the last 4 or 5 years on and off the pitch. A lot of people would say, well, what Keith Long has done there and Trevor Crawley on the men's side in the League of Ireland, they've been really good. Obviously, they probably haven't had the start of the season they maybe would have liked this year, but they're 100% fan owned. Dundalk a couple of years ago were brought in, when they're having the success by an American style company. I think it was called Elevate or something, where they were brought in and I think they were involved in Bournemouth. A lot of people were hopeful. There was talks of Andy Burton, remember your man from Sky, being involved as some sort of kind of representative. It's what a lot of clubs have done in the past, and it just hasn't really worked. Well, obviously it has, but when you have difficulties, it doesn't work, and there becomes a real disconnect. And obviously, at the minute, there was protest there the other night of their game, and hopefully it can get sorted. But they come to a place. And we've all seen in the Sunderland documentary of who's going to buy it, who's going to take over, who's going to replace him, and it is a bit scary to know. And I'm sure there's people in Dundalk and Waterford that are really, really kind of interested to see what way it goes for their club. And Cork have obviously had issues. They were fan owned, and there were talks of the guy at Preston buying it to write off all the debt. So it's just all a mess anyway. Do you remember, Dan, we were at a game in Turner's Cross? I'd say I was 7 or 8, and it was Bray and Cork, and the Cork fans, I'll always remember, they're singing, they don't care about hat-tricks, they don't care about fans, Cork City Football Club is in the wrong hands. And I remember going to games in the Aviva singing about Delaney. A couple of years ago, the tennis ball protests, like, it's everywhere in football. I mean, it's everywhere in a lot of sports. But obviously, football is the most watched sport in the world. It's the one where wealthy people can get their teeth into the most because it's so worldwide. And it's just it's taken over, really, and it's come to the fore now. And it is at a crossroads, at a major crossroads, because we could be living with this legacy for 30, 40 years,
Last thing on this before we move on to Jose, what percentage chance do you think of the ESL, as Emmett's calling it here, going ahead? It's a tough one to answer, but
I would say I'd say 85% sure it will go ahead in some capacity. I would say probably about 30 or 40% sure that UEFA and FIFA will have some sort of cut in it, because I can't see a scenario personally where there's people playing in this ESL that can't play in a World Cup. I mean, the World Cup's the pinnacle of the game. The Euros are coming up. I just don't see it unless UEFA and FIFA buy in. The only hope we have is UEFA and FIFA stand up to this. And like I've said a couple of times, we've nothing to go off that they're going to do it. Obviously they've new people in charge, but it's the same sort of people in the background pulling strings. We have, us in Ireland have an incredible perspective on this because we've lived through this with John Delaney. We can look over to England and see different things that have happened, but we've lived through this corruption where John Delaney got his way up to vice president of the UEFA, different sort of groups he was involved in, and that's ultimately where it's come.
Yeah, a quick one on Jose then. So do you, nothing's been confirmed yet for that comment there below, but do you think this had the timing of it surely means that Jose had some sort of say to Spurs, maybe, or maybe like my thinking is maybe he had a row with Daniel Levy this morning and Daniel Levy beat him to the news, or well, at the moment nothing's confirmed, but I guess the timing's odd considering that you were even talking about on Thursday's podcast, there's no better man for a cup final than Jose. So the fact he's been sacked a week before, indicates that it probably has something to do with the Super League, albeit we don't know anything yet.
I would say it probably has had something to do with it, but I don't think it takes away from the fact that Jose and Tottenham have really been struggling. The players looked, the other night, the players looked really disinterested. I thought they were horrendous, and it just shows you. I mean, I think anyone can get a few results with Tottenham because they've Harry Kane. You can't really miss, and obviously his injury's big. That's wonder if it's some sort of side talk that they want people to forget about Harry Kane's injury, and then he goes and plays. But I do think it's interesting. I'm not sure about Daniel Levy and Mourinho. No one knows the ins and outs of it. Mourinho's a very interesting guy. I'm sure we'll hear his side of the story. He'll get filtered out into the different sort of media spheres he's in. But I hope it has something to do with it. I hope managers step up. I think it'd be really interesting because we're at a really big thing where, Pep Guardiola, do I think he's the most moral person in the world? I'm not sure. I mean, he works for a club that is owned by billionaires that have a horrendous human rights record. He himself is probably a millionaire. Do I expect him to resign? No. I mean, Man City challenged their UEFA here, and this is all UEFA's legacy. Financial fair play is a shambles. FIFA's legacy, it's all a shambles. Then you have Jurgen Klopp. I think if there's any couple of managers to resign from it, I think it could be Jurgen Klopp, coming from his Dortmund background, coming from the German sort of model of fan ownership and the importance of it, and how they absolutely despise Leipzig in that sense. So I think, and the only other one I think is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, because he's a Sir Alex Ferguson disciple, because he's a United lad. He's that United side, if you like, grown from the class of '92 and United, the history that United has. So they'd be the only two big managers to resign, if I think.
And just on that point, I saw because we're not in the United world or Twitter, so when I saw a tweet saying, this is probably a point made loads of times for United fans, but I know they don't have to tell their manager about what they're going to do with their club, but Ole Gunnar Solskjaer not knowing and Alex Ferguson finding out through the media about the European Super League on Sunday morning, to me doesn't sit right, does it?
No, well, that's what it's nothing to do with clubs. I mean, it's the 6 clubs have names. Obviously, they're the big identities to it, but it's the owners. I mean, it's Stan Kroenke, it's John Henry, it's Joe Glazer, it's Perez at Madrid, it's all these the oligarchy in City, Roman Abramovich in Chelsea. So that's what it is. It's nothing to do with the clubs. And there's so much history and tradition in those clubs that had literally fallen by the wayside. And I think it'd be very interesting to hear what the player, I'm very much looking forward to the match tonight, Liverpool Leeds, see what, if anything, is said. But so many of these footballers have called brilliantly, and they've been really mobilised in the last year or so with coronavirus. And first it was the work with the NHS and donating money. Then it was obviously a lot of stuff about injustices, racial, and the mobilisation of the taking the knee and stuff. I hope footballers do come up and stand for this, because otherwise it would leave a bit of a bitter taste. Because you've people footballers come, like, if you look at the Premier League, there's people from all different backgrounds, all different parts of the world, all different religions. Even if you look at different teams in Liverpool, all different parts of the country, Holland, Joe Gomez from London, Milner from Leeds, Henderson from the Northeast. So you hope they do kind of round up behind it. Otherwise, it will leave a really bitter taste. But I think they will. Um, but I think it's I don't know. I think like it has been an issue with modern football. I mean, like that idea, that image of Riole and Haaland's dad traveling around the clubs to find a way of getting the most money for their son's transfer. I mean, that's the game now. That's what it is.
Yeah, like I can see that there being a bit of a players backlash to this, because I know money talks and all for players, but even just seeing some of, like, I think Bakary Sagna tweeted, "This isn't football anymore," and I think that will happen a lot. I understand you're under pressure with your employers, but like even on a different topic, like this has been going out of hand. Like the fact that Willian gets, what does he get a week? £200,000. Aubameyang 250. There's 500 grand a week. At Arsenal, just kind of thrown away. The wages have kind of spoiled. It's all been kind of building up to this, like you said. But is there a chance that the players do kind of to make a stand on this? Because the players hold the power. Like, and we've even seen in the last year, like you touched on Marcus Rashford, for example. I know a lot more serious issues, but he's been able to tackle them head on. That I don't think players would have a problem taking on and going against the Super League, albeit you are kind of going against where your bread is buttered. So they're obviously in a bad position themselves as well.
Yeah. So UEFA, FIFA, they're the two that can influence it at board level. I think the people that can influence it themselves is by if the players decide and not want to play. Obviously, that's a crucial thing. And you're right, there is a lot of tweets going out by different people, and the Herrera being one. Obviously, PSG, who you would kind of expect to be the head of this sort of movement, they haven't. See Sean's comment there about Yannick Bolasie. Yeah, a lot of people are calling for. But I do hope. I mean, I do hope your Jordan Hendersons, James Milners, Harry Maguire, Harry Kane, these guys, people that have been involved at the top level, especially the guys that are English. Like, I mean, Harry Maguire is captain of probably the biggest club in England, one of the biggest clubs in the world.
You biggest look at the way, in the world, I'd say.
Yeah. You look at the way he's come through the ranks, right? He started off at Sheffield. It's near where he's from. He was at Sheffield. He's been on loan at places like Wigan, went to Hull, Leicester, and United. He is the definition of climbing the English football pyramid. He's the basically the image of what's good about English football recently. And the way he's come through it, and to be, he's kind of the ultimate dream of a kid growing up. Jamie Vardy as well. So these players have to speak out. I hope they do, because otherwise they're what people think they are, and I think there's a lot more to footballers than people give them credit. But if they do come up, and I feel sorry for people like that are coming, guys like Mason Greenwood, Phil Foden, Bukayo Saka, guys that are 19, 20, about to embark on, the career of a lifetime. Jude Bellingham, playing in the Euros this year, and all of a sudden they've got this hanging over them where it's either one or the other. It's either your club or your country if UEFA and FIFA hold their stance. But I'm not sure if they will. I think they'll get a bit of cut of it, and I think we'll end up with this. I hope not, because it's pure greed. But greed has been ruling football for decades.
What about that question from Andrew there about managers? Like, let's just take it from an Arsenal perspective. I personally would be upset if Mikel Arteta fielded questions with a no comment, or, albeit he is in a very difficult position, if he didn't come up with this system and his club again employs him, I would still, and maybe that's me wanting Mikel Arteta to be this amazing person. Would you be upset if he didn't condemn this? Because he probably can't condemn it with his employers, or maybe there'll be another Jose Mourinho situation.
No, I don't know if I'd be upset, because it's the game they're in. It's the money making racket they're in. I'd like to think they would. Like I said, I think the big one will be Klopp. It'd be very interesting to hear what Klopp says. Even Bielsa, coming from Argentina, his ideas on football, what it means to people. And let's not forget, Leeds have gone through owner after owner, eventually found a sort of a system that works. And God, a lot of years of heartache. The money that was wasted around 2004 to come back, it's brilliant. But they had a lot of years in the wilderness where, their voice probably wasn't heard as well. I remember just watching Sky News one time, and they were outside one of I think it was Ellen Road or somewhere, and they were just giving out about the owner, and I remember just going like, how is this accepted? How is this just normalized? But I think ultimately, I'd love to hear what Klopp says. I think he's, for what he is, he's an extremely passionate person, but I think he gets football quite well. I think he's measured on that. I think he gets the football fan well. So I'm hoping he tonight. But I wouldn't be disappointed in the only two I probably would be is Klopp and Solskjaer, particularly because they know what those clubs are about. Klopp has lived Liverpool and breathed it for 5 or 6 years.
Maybe Solskjaer less so, I guess, because he's so inexperienced in management role. Like I know, I guess he'll probably be on to Fergie all day, and they'll want and all his United mates actually probably, given how big a situation is. And on a different topic, it'll be interesting on Monday Night Football now that Gary Neville, like you said, you were telling me, texting me there, you were Robbie Fowler's been kicked off for Gary Neville. Yeah, poor Robbie Fowler. I know he'd been good on a Monday Night Football. Has he not been on before ever? No.
No, I don't think
he must not have been. I don't think he has. Yeah, but Gary Neville's been on, so it's going to kick off again on Monday Night Football before Leeds Liverpool. And actually, Klopp, Jesus, yeah, to talk. So I think Evan in the comments says Tuchel will be interviewed at 1:30, and then we've got all the build up to Klopp. And pretty much, but me personally, I'd be more interested in Klopp than Ole Gunnar, and the fact that Klopp will be on tonight, as long as that game doesn't get cancelled, which obviously I don't think it will be.
Yeah, and I think obviously Klopp with the German mentality on football, the fan ownership, and he's at a club with so much heart and passion, and so much sort of belief in like, you go back to Bill Shankly and socialism and what Liverpool has obviously been through as a football club, what United has been through, but especially Liverpool with the Hillsborough and how everyone ousted them and came out against them, and they're very much their own little state within England. And I'd say there's so many Scousers and so many Liverpudlians that are waking up and probably looking and ringing their brother who could be an Evertonian, going, what have we become? This isn't who I've supported. And that's just what football is now. It's become they've forgotten about fans. There's all this talk about legacy fans, and it has been down this road before, but not at a scale like this. This is kind of, as Eamon Dunphy would say, this kind of mad stuff. This is, the best players in the world that mightn't be playing in a World Cup final. Like, God forbid, in 4 or 5 years' time, we're watching a World Cup and it's, for example, Mbappe's not playing, or Haaland's not playing, or Phil Foden, or whatever it is. Like, it doesn't seem real, does it? So that's why I think UEFA and FIFA, they hold a lot of cards, because they can let these lads off to their own devices. They go and do it. The clubs will die. People in England, there'll be establishment of like the FC Manchester club, and I think that's what will happen.
Yeah, even Connor's point here will kind of come back to, like, it's. I think Fergie said it last night. It's like 70 years of European history, and I think the beauty of football is you have that history. And I know Premier League's only been around since '92, but even as Arsenal fans ourselves, I know someone's asking in the comments there, 1989 Arsenal Liverpool, that's still memorable. It's still the same competition, albeit it's under a different brand. And I think it was pretty much 24 teams, and then stayed at 24 teams, and then went to 20, if my memory serves me correct. But Arsenal have never won the Champions League. That's a big goal of ours. And I don't think it'll happen anymore. We might have a chance of the European Super League. Definitely not. I think knockout competitions is our only chance. But like, the FA Cup was already dying. That's probably going to be dead now. And I just come back to what Emmett said earlier. Like, I'd be still hopeful that this can be sorted out. I know the kind of clubs have gone all in and the ownership, but like, if they don't sell tickets for England fans, and I know the markets will be there, but surely half empty stadiums will deter this, or do you just still think it's going to go ahead?
They'll find a way. Like, they'll find a way of filling these stadiums. They'll lose the people who care, the people who are most passionate, the people who hold the club most to account, and they're happy to lose them. Some of the owners, like the owner of Arsenal, Stan Kroenke, put up a comment a couple of years ago just saying, we don't want passionate fans. We don't want fans who are going to cause us trouble. So that's what it is. To them, it's just going to change. It's just not going to be what football you think it is, and it's obviously it's a real shame, but it's kind of been coming for a few years. So I don't think people should be overly surprised. FIFA and UEFA have allowed football owners to become so big, football clubs to become so big, the finances to become just extraordinary. When you think of, you're right with some of the players that are on high bucks. Mesut Ozil, 350 grand a week not to play, all that sort of stuff. This has been mobilized, and like some people I think were a little bit like, obviously I thought Gary Neville hit the nail on the head really high. You've got to remember he's coming from 20 years of service to Manchester United, and then people are slagging, oh well, he's got Salford and all this, and yeah, no, I would agree, and the Premier League was breakaway, but the Premier League didn't rip up what English football really is about, if you like. Obviously, it has flaws, like I said, with what had the come down of finances from Bolton and Pompey and clubs like that. And it's a real, clubs can get themselves in real ruts. But this is a breakaway from all that. This is elitism. It's no competition. It's franchise football basically, and this is what it has become really. And it is very much, you're going to be looking at like an NFL style system in a couple of years. To be draft, to be no loyalty. Like what I would think about, like I was thinking about it last night. I mean, what people like Alex Ferguson, Kenny Dalglish, um, Tony Adams at Arsenal, people like this feel about their clubs now, because it's a shadow of what they are. It's not their club. It's what the owners have allowed their club to be.
And have we just, as fans, almost pretend like, Stan Kroenke's not there? Like Newcastle have obviously really tried to get Mike Ashley there, but we've kind of like looked past the ownership because the club is still the club. Like take Liverpool for example, and their ownership, and the transfers have gone really well up until this year. Jurgen Klopp, phenomenal manager. They won their first league in 30 years. Everything, not that everything's amazing, but they have such a team to be so proud of. And then, you kind of forget that the owners are kind of working almost against the fans in the background. And have we as fans taken Liverpool as that prime example? And United Glazers. So, for example, green and gold to the club is sold. And it just felt like maybe 5% of United fans did that instead of the 85% fans they needed for that to really have an impact. And FC United, Manchester was set up. And I only realised today that AFC Liverpool was set up a couple of years ago. Like me personally, I wasn't aware of that. So maybe that shows they didn't quite hit the nail on the head there themselves. But did us as fans just kind of like, it's not as bad, it's not that bad, we'll just kind of stay with it? Is there any proportion of blame for fans kind of looking past the ownerships for now for this happening, or were fans always powerless from the start basically?
Yeah, I think they've always been. I mean, you look at some of the kickoff times that have been implemented and the short notice. I mean, we went to Arsenal Leicester a few years ago. We had to change flights and all, and that was just us, and there's been Monday night games at 8 o'clock where fans are traveling right across the country at short notice. I mean, yes, there's always been evening kickoffs. The Arsenal Liverpool game in '89 was an evening kickoff. Arsenal fans probably didn't get home till 3 or 4 in the morning. It's always happened, but it's the short term and it's the power that Sky obviously and BT have had. Like, let's not make any mistakes. Sky have been given so much power. I think what it is FIFA and UEFA have just lost their power. They've lost their bargaining tool. The big corporations, you got to remember who owns Sky, people like this, they're in it to make money, and there's nothing wrong with money in the game. It's as long as it's in the right hands, and it's not at the minute. FIFA and UEFA, the FA, the FAI in Ireland have, very little power in the grand scheme of things, and all these big clubs in England have a lot of the power, and it's just it's a bit scandalous really, and it's the timing of it, because fans can't mobilize a protest at the minute.
Well, I think that's like the COVID-19 pandemic, and everyone's like, well, that's obviously accelerated it. And again, Gary made reference to this. I think it's so frustrating that they're just doing this while fans aren't even in stadium. And me and you have spoken on the podcast before how, well, you more so, that it just seems a bit dead football and behind closed doors, and that result wouldn't happen without fans. And it's just a different game. And it's almost like the owners have seen it going, well, it's still going out on TV. They're still getting all these viewers. Let's just go for it. We're going to get abuse. Now, maybe I personally think they might have misread the room even more so than they thought. Like they were expecting a backlash, but I still think there's too much of a backlash there for it to not happen in the current format, hopefully. But it's almost like they waited for this opportunity. They can't believe their luck. The TV money's as big as ever because there's more games being shown, and I guess they've kind of said, let's go for it right now.
Yeah, it's also a reality check for the Premier League as well, because they've been treating fans really poorly. €15 it was pay-per-view to watch. I think it was Burnley and Sheffield United in one of the games or something like that. I mean, so they've been treating fans badly. So it's a bit of karma for them, but it's the karma in the worst way for the football fan. The football fan doesn't benefit anything from this, Games like that are going to they're just going to allow this to, Arsenal against Barcelona is going to be played in New York, or it's going to be played in Beijing or Shanghai. You know, that's what it's going to be. It's not going to be played in the Emirates, or it's not really going to be played in the new camp. It's not going to be for the average match day going fan. And it is like they'll find a way of selling it because people in America are going to buy into this. People in Asia, like you look at the financing that has come. Like I don't think there's any way that it doesn't go ahead in some shape or form. The only tool that UEFA and FIFA have is the banning of players playing for their country and playing in Champions Leagues and domestic leagues. So that's the only bargaining tool they have. I don't trust them, if I'm honest. I don't trust anyone in football. We've had it from our own experience here in Ireland with the FBI. Other people have it with their own clubs. So what's going to happen to the Euros at the end of the year? Like, what's going to happen to the Champions League? What's going to happen to the Premier League? Who knows? The FA Cup. It's just all a bit bonkers.
It's depressing, isn't it? Let's have a quick word on Spurs because I know we kind of got sidetracked. Next Spurs manager for you. Who have we seen in the comments so far? Eddie Howe was
Nagelsmann.
one. Yeah.
And there
was Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah, like I'm not sure where Spurs go really because they've had a coach in Pochettino, someone who had an identity who could build a club around for 4 or 5 years, and then they ripped it up and threw it at Mourinho. Like it's bizarre, absolutely bizarre. Brand new stadium, and they wanted quick success, and Mourinho couldn't really give it to them. The timing is very odd. Like I'd love to be a fly on the wall. We will be hopefully in the summer. I don't know if they announced a new deal with Amazon, but anyway, like that. But that it's just happened, and it's happened so quickly. There's a lot of different people they could.
Scotty Parker, there's a shout now.
Yeah, maybe. I think Tottenham.
Former Spurs player, obviously. So.
Yeah, but he's former player for every London club bar Arsenal. I think. Maybe. But he's
Charlton, Fulham,
West Ham, Fulham, Tottenham, and Chelsea.
5. Jesus.
I'd say that's a record. But anyway, like that's what it's become, like because they're in the Super League now. God, you'd have to have some neck to move from a club like I see Brendan Rodgers there from Leicester.
Sorry to cut across, Sean. Isn't Brendan Rodgers not the perfect European Super League manager?
He kind of is. He has very much that kind of self-centered kind of attitude, maybe, if you like. I think people personally like Rodgers are going to wait for 2 or 3 years. They're going to wait for this to blow over. It's like every controversy that has, there's public outcry, then there's the kind of the absolute saturation in the media. Everyone is talking about it. It's like Brexit. You just kind of hear about it every couple, and then people just get fed up and go, do you know what? Let it happen. Let's see what happens in 2 or 3 years. Sure, can't we always come back? And I just don't think they'll come back. But I think that's what's going to happen. We've had the outcry. It's like everything. Absolute saturation in the market. Turned on RT Radio 1. There's Mark Lawrence on Claire Byrne. Put on Sky News. Graham Souness. 2 teammates from back in the day. Liverpool. And that's who I feel sorry for most. People like that whose club is just gone. Alex Ferguson. Kenny Dalglish. I think they knew this day was always going to come, but I don't think they would have wanted to be around to see it, But on the Tottenham thing, I think Tottenham need a coach. Nagelsmann, there's talks of Leipzig going in, wouldn't surprise me with their background.
Which defeats the whole purpose of, because of the history of Arsenal Spurs, for example. But it's all money, isn't it? And everyone knows that, I know, but it's just depressing. Yeah,
it's kind of like, I see Ian Wright put up something about David Rocastle at Arsenal. Remember who you are, what you are, and who you represent. And Liverpool, the Shankly quotes have come out. United, the Matt Busby quotes have come out. But it's gone. Like it's been ripped up within, and all that work seems to be kind of undergone. I'm not sure what's going to happen. And obviously, like you got to remember, the people putting it out, Sky have a motive. I'm sure when it happens in 5 years, they're going to want a cut of the TV rights. Of course,
which was watching it. I was kind of going like Gary Neville, and they'll be doing it again tonight. Him and Carragher. And Carragher hasn't been on yet, has he? On Sky, no, it was Roy and Miki yesterday. That they're going to be put themselves in such a position where they're going to be so against the idea that if or when it goes ahead, they're going to be absolute hypocrites. Whether that matters to them or not is probably irrelevant.
No, but in fairness to them, they're trying to safeguard their club for their supporters as well, And obviously, like people probably disagreed with the Premier League at the time. People probably disagree with a lot of things. You get on with life, You can't. People don't want Boris Johnson in power or Donald Trump in power, but they came into power. You just got to soak it up for a couple of years. Doesn't mean you move country. It doesn't mean you disagree? Are you, it's just part of it, a part of it. But it's just it is bizarre. But like I said, I see comments there about Liverpool, like Liverpool's history with the Champions League is unbelievable, and I've listened to different podcasts about people talking about it and what it means to Liverpool, and I don't think there's any fan of any club that agrees with it. So I see all the stuff about blame. It's not about the clubs. It's about six owners that are going to maximise their wealth. No one at the club, no Premier League manager, I would safely say, wants it, thinks it's a great idea, thinks it's worth the hassle that it is. I don't know, maybe they do, but I'm very much looking forward to Klopp. I think Klopp's going to have a very big say in it. I hope he does now, because he's always struck me as a good kind of honest man. Yeah, he might get upset about certain things, and he's always been one about TV companies, obviously with fixture changes, but he's very much connected to Liverpool in a very good way. So hopefully he does.
Quick word, Nuno, in a couple of words, would he be a good fit at Spurs? Coach?
I'm not sure. I haven't really been impressed with Wolves. I've kind of liked Wolves, but I've never been overly impressed with them at times. I think they kind of struggle. I think they're very much one way with certain things. Wolves, I think he's quite set in his work. If they brought Nuno in, I think it would take 3 or 4 transfer windows to get the players he wants. Whereas I think if you brought Rodgers in, I think, but Spurs definitely need a coach. They don't need a manager, I think, because they need stability, and stability comes with a good, strong coach, I think.
Yeah, finishing up, anyone who wants to get their last comment in, Connor Soares there, Richard Rio Ferdinand saying to attack on football when he was telling Newcastle fans to buy the club when they'd gripes with Ashley. And are you agreement with that?
Yeah, I probably would be. Yeah, obviously, I think Rio, and probably got that comment wrong when he said it. But that's just
well, just on that, he doubled, like he did it 18 months ago, got the backlash, and then he said it again. So normally, I'd say in heat in the moment, and Rio's kind of not looking for clicks, but you know what I'm saying. But he actually's gone out of his way twice now to have a pop at Newcastle fans. So I think that's been a little bit too fair on Rio, maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe it is, but like obviously Newcastle are a prime example of. God, I'd say that the Saudi Arabians probably were buying the club to maybe have a say in this Super League, and I think you're just going to always see that. And obviously Newcastle is very much a working class part of England. It's very much football at the centre of what they do, and I think it's a kick in the teeth for every football club in England, because they don't want to see the big six go from the English game, because they'll lose an awful lot of money, and it's all filtered down. And like I said, Harry Maguire is the captain, like, of the biggest club in England, one of the biggest clubs in the world, and he's come through this. He's come through being on loan at different clubs. He's come through League One at clubs like Wigan, Hull, and all of a sudden that won't really happen, will it? No. Will they allow players to sign? Who knows? But anyway.
But yeah, Shane saying Klopp said it was bollocks back in 2019. So yeah, be interesting what he says tonight, if anything. And it'll be a good Monday Night Football. I'm sure everyone will be tuning in for, as I said, the dream team's back. Sean, we were only giving out about it, but at least it's the two lads are back. And
but they both come from really good points, because you've got Gary, who's very much knows the game at the boardroom level, has been at a club that has been successful throughout its whole time, whereas you've got Jamie, who's very much connected on the ground to Liverpool Football Club, and hopefully he'll deliver a passion play. But I think they need more than that. I think they need bigger. They need bigger than just the fans mobilising it. I think it's, like I said, UEFA and FIFA, they hold the power in all this.
And just on Gary, before there's a couple of questions before we finish up within the hour. Gary Salford, I know you briefly touched on it, but what he done, is that like now a little bit hypocritical of what he said about Manchester United and the fact that he's kind of like steamrolled his way through the football pyramid, or is that just like small fish? Would you have any strong opinions on that?
No, I don't think there's any problem with that, because I don't think there's anything with selling a club a dream. And I don't think Gary Neville's gone in there to necessarily make a whole heap of money, and I'm sure they've lost a load of money, but he's there to help the club establish a dream. I don't think there's anything wrong with a club that has happened, and there's been a lot of clubs where they've been able to do it, and I don't think there is anything wrong with that. But this is elitism, this is a breakaway, this is wealth at the highest order. Obviously people mightn't have an interest in Salford, but it's happened with Man City. I'd rather, if you're a club in the National League and you're a Kidderminster Harriers, and someone comes in and says, look lads, I want to help you. I'm from around the area, or my family are from around the area. I don't think there's anything wrong in that either. Like,
he's gone in with they've gone in with
these
the right
clubs,
intentions.
If he went in, if he took a Newcastle or someone like that, I'd be going, oh well, what's his ulterior motive? They're from the area. The city was obviously very good to their football career, and they're at a club that then otherwise would be continuously struggling. And these clubs need money. These clubs need owners to come in, because a lot of the clubs are on their knees. And I don't think it's a bad thing that Gary Neville and all those guys are in with United. In with Salford. But obviously you do kind of need a little bit
when
of
they're
check.
going through, yeah. But listen, yeah, go on. Last point, go on.
It is a break. Like, it's nothing to do with the clubs. It's a breakaway by 12 rich men who are wanting to make even further money, and they're breaking away from football as we know it. And it's gonna be an interesting couple of months. But Premier like I said, UEFA didn't uphold City's Champions League ban. I don't trust them. With me last Euro, so I think we're gonna be watching the Super League. I think could be great, Dan. You never know.
Don't start that now. Premier League fan predictions is what everyone's here for. We are level at 6-all going into the last game. So for those that know, every week we do Premier League fan predictions. 3 points for a correct score, 1 point for a correct result. Winner stays on. With the kind of day, you get new people on every couple of weeks. Shane, we were looking for a bit of content, didn't we? So we brought Shane on a second time, and he's won 6 in a row, going for 7 up against Brian Murphy. They're currently tied at 6-all. Going into the last game, Shane's predicted 3-1 Leeds United. Brian's predicted 2-all Leeds Liverpool tonight. Sean, what is the score going to be first of all from James Moffat?
I don't know.
Who did 3 in a row himself?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it's going to be, because Liverpool could be in an absolute mess. Like, I don't know. Hopefully it's a good game. I'd probably give Leeds a good old chance, but hopefully the Liverpool players put in a performance where you go, well, to be honest, I don't really know. I don't know.
I mean, if Liverpool do win, it'll come down to tiebreak, which I think Brian's winning at the moment because he's gone for the later minute. So Shane needs an early goal. Otherwise, he needs a Leeds win, basically. So it'll come down to that, and the winner stays on. We'll be back and we've a few ideas on who to take on next. But hopefully, Emma, you're looking forward to Shane losing predictions this week. Yes, is the answer. We've run out of stuff to talk about. Isn't that right, Sean?
Yeah.
And thanks to Brian for the Desmonds, the 2-alls. You've been very unlucky. I think Joe Willock really stole the show for you, Brian, to be honest with you. With scoring that last minute goal and you were so far ahead, and Shane just crept his way back, but he always does that. But listen, at Tackling Sport, the new Premier League fan predictions will be out. We might do a live show again on Thursday. That was a bit of crack. Might do that Thursday night. And then just keep up to date. I think someone asked, we'll get Beano Dowling back on, Sean, for a Punch Center preview.
Yeah, well, anything other than the ESL.
The ESL, exactly. Yeah, we're going to just stop talking about it. Everyone tune into Monday Night Football. I'm sure we'll all be on Twitter and at Tackling Sport on our social media. Keep up to date. And all I left to say is goodbye from Sean.
Right.
It's goodbye from myself. Appreciate you interacting in the show, and we'll chat to you during the week.